A topic that constantly comes up from my clients is the concept of debt. People go on YouTube or pick your different sites and they say, oh, debt's good, debt's bad, this is okay, this is not okay. I wanted to kind of go through what I consider the 6 main reasons someone might go into debt. What are the ones that I find to be more worthwhile? And I kind of give some details on, all right, if this even is one of the ones that's worthwhile, how should we approach it? So first and foremost, there is credit card debt. I find very little in terms of desirability when it comes to credit card debt. So what does that mean? Yes, of course, if the furnace goes and we don't have liquidity, we got to keep the heat on. So if something is a need, absolutely use the credit card. It becomes kind of meaningless if we don't have a refrigerator, if the credit card is going to charge us 10, 15, 20%. You have to have it, in which case, absolutely use it. How do we not want to use a credit card? Something that does come up all the time is people want to go on vacation. Let's say a vacation cost $5,000. So they put it on the credit card, and then over the 6 months, they pay it off. And so let's say, in this example, they pay $1,000 of interest paying off that $5,000 vacation. What you're much better off doing is saving for that 6 months, in which case, once you have the funds, then go on the vacation. So what is this really coming down to? If you have a need, an absolute need, my car needs a new transition, I need a new furnace, absolutely use a credit card. But if you're putting vacations, shopping on a credit card, and you can't pay it off by the end of the month, you should highly, highly avoid it. Credit card debt, you do not get a tax deduction, and it's brutal rates. So please use credit cards selectively. 2, car loans. Now, I'm not going to go so far to say car is an asset, but it is a need. I have to get to and from work. Where people get in trouble with car loans is say, like I just said, I have to get to work, I absolutely need a car, there's no way I couldn't get by without a car. All right, that's true. But there's a really big difference between getting a car that's $40,000 and getting a car that's $70,000. So yes, if we have to borrow money to get a car, that seems like a very necessary thing to get a loan for, but you should be hyper conscientious of how much you need to borrow. The car companies today have done a fantastic job of, allowing you to lower your payments and push it out. Not what used to be 2, 3, 4 year loans. Now it's 5, 6, 7 year loans. So car loans may be necessary, but you should be highly conscious of the interest rate they're being charged, the duration of the loan, and how much you're spending overall. 3, line of credits on a house. Now, in a lot of situations, these are now deductible, but it makes it a little bit better. Rates are still reasonable compared to a credit card, but again, you should go with the same philosophy as I was saying with a credit card. If something is a need, absolutely use it. But going back to what we were giving an example of before, let's say there's a bathroom, we want to have it redone, and that's going to cost $15,000. Well, unless something's broken and there's an absolute need, but we just, please plan for it in advance. This way we can avoid extra interest payments. Whether they're deductible or not, it's still painful. It's still money we're throwing down the drain. So on the more planned things that are just based on wants, I'd highly recommend trying to save up before, as opposed to do it and pay the interest and pay it off over time. 4, student loans. Now, in our society, I would say, unless you were going into the trades, it might be a necessary evil to get a decent paying job in terms of secondary education and needing to utilize student loans to do it. But again, going back to what I was giving you the example of the car, there's a $40,000 car and there's a $70,000 car. If we know we have to go on in debt to get that college degree, we should be conscientious of, what school are we going to? Are we going to one of the top schools costing $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year to get a very basic degree? Or are we going to community college and local state schools and commuting, in which case, yeah, we're going to have some debt, but it's much more manageable debt. The second thing I think that's important, especially for people that want to go to school later in life, is understanding the concept of a return on your investment. So let's say you're 25 years old and you're going to go to school and it's going to cost 20 grand. But when you come out of school, it's going to increase your salary 10 grand a year. Well, if that happens when you're 25, well, you're going to get that extra 10 grand over 40 years. That's a fantastic return on investment. But the closer you are to the retirement, the smaller the period where you get to enjoy the increase in your salary due to going back to school. So you want to think long and hard if you're going to sign yourself up for a lot of student loan debt later on in life. Again, might be a necessary evil, but you should absolutely know your numbers, know what might be the return on your investment if you were to go back to school. Fifth category of debt is a mortgage, typically for a primary house. Now we have something that we are purchasing an asset. Now, when it comes to an asset, there's different types of assets. I consider a primary residence similar to what I would say as a high yield savings account or maybe CDs. They are probably going to get you a return somewhere around what inflation is going to be. Maybe it's inflation plus 1%. So if inflation's running at 3%, maybe your home will increase in value 4% or 3% or somewhere in that ballpark. But at least it's an asset that's going up in value over time. Again, you want to be conscientious to not going to more debt than you can sustain. But there's a lot of reasons to buy a primary home, for the family dynamic, for the emotional, for the psychological. So yes, I'm all for home ownership, but within reason based on your overall budget. And the sixth and final category that someone might use debt would be as an investment. Maybe you're getting a business loan to open a business. Maybe you're getting a loan from the bank to buy an apartment complex. Now we're really talking. Now we're investing in something that not only is going to keep up with inflation, but hopefully is making you, 2, 3, 4, 5% above inflation. Now again, you want to be caught. You don't want to be caught being too leveraged. But these are where you might be finding videos online where someone might be saying debt's a good thing. Again, all within reason. I don't mind as much debts to buy assets that maybe provide you with income. But again, you want to keep with numbers that you can sustain. Now, if you have any questions when it comes to your debt and maybe what you should prioritize or maybe you're thinking about going back to school, always feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email. Happy to go through it with you.